Welcome closers, Jordan Muela with Lead Simple. Today we're going to be talking about follow-up. We want to build a consistent strategy for you to have a dominant approach to following up and making sure that you're doing everything you can to take that lead to the point of close. So let's talk first about lead response time. This is something that's near and dear to my heart. You've probably heard me talk about before. The amount of time that passes between a new lead coming in and you actually responding is a direct correlation between both making contact as well as eventually making the sale. And in both cases, what we know through mounds and mounds of research, stats, and statistics, which I'm not going to bore you with right now, is that the first person and the quickest person to actually respond has a hugely disproportionate advantage when it actually comes to closing the business. There's a lot of different ways that you can structure that. A couple of the basics are first making sure that you have automated response technology. So when that lead comes in, you're getting a phone call to actually notify you of that fact. And secondarily, you have a fallback. The primary salesperson in your organization, it could be you, it could be somebody on staff. Regardless of who that person is, they're not limitless in their ability to respond. They're going to be tied up from time to time. And so what's really important is making sure that we have an appropriate backup plan, backup strategy. Let's say that your primary salesperson is unavailable when a new lead comes in. The question is, who's the next best person to take that call? And what I don't mean is actually replacing your primary closer. Even if this is the front desk person that normally takes inbound calls of all varieties, that person is still capable of responding, acknowledging receipt of the lead, and actually scheduling a conversation at a time for the primary closer to follow up. And what I would recommend is, rather than prioritizing having the primary salesperson be the first person to respond, is having someone in your organization respond as quickly as possible. Kind of the success metric of what we're looking for is having the person on the other end of the phone say, "Wow, that was crazy. How on earth did you call me back so quickly?" When you're getting those kind of responses on a regular basis, that's when you know that you're doing a good job of following up quickly. Let's move on here. When we get past that initial follow-up, which is what people tend to prioritize, now we're talking about kind of post-first conversation, what I would call midterm follow-up. This is where you had a conversation that hopefully went well, you got some buy-in on some level, but now a number of things could have happened. It could be that this person has gone dark on you, it could be that they say they changed their mind, it could be that they say they're not ready, or they say they are ready, but for whatever reason they're not responding. In all of these situations, we have to ask the question, what are we going to do to drive the conversation forward to actually have a definitive conclusion? And my recommendation, my strong recommendation to you, is to always follow up until you get a response. That response could be a yes, no, maybe. It could be a no under any circumstances for all time, whatever it may be. All of those answers give you the kind of closure that you can use to learn something and advance the conversation in some way. What we want to avoid is being in sales limbo land, where you're kind of taking the approach of, hey, we had a good conversation, I gave you the information, and now the ball is in your court. That is exactly what we don't want to do. And hey, I get it. You don't want to bug people. You don't want to feel like an annoyance. You're busy. You've got a bunch of other stuff to do. But the reality is that opportunity that came towards you, you worked for it. You spent money, you marketed, you've earned the opportunity. The last thing we want to do now is let it wither on the vine. And the person that actually gave you permission, they contacted you. When you have that precious asset called permission, we want to use it to the max, and we want to drive an ultimate outcome in this conversation. So be relentless, follow up until you actually get a definitive answer. Now that said, I want to temper that piece of advice with this. Even though you do want to have aggressive follow-up, you want to make sure that you're doing it in context. And the further you get from the point of origination, meaning the initial point of contact, the more and more important it is to make sure that we're actually leading with value in this conversation. Under no circumstances do we want the other party to feel like that they are being spammed. I've been spammed, you've been spammed. Nobody enjoys that, and that is not going to advance your business goals in the sales process. So what we want to make sure that we're doing is we're leading off with phone 110%. Autoresponders, I have mixed feelings about. There can be some value there, but there is no value there if you were doing that as an excuse and in place of actually making an outbound phone call. If you've led off with phone, you've had an autoresponder come out, the further that we're getting from that, the more we're going to be shifting from leading off with phone more and more towards email. The deeper that we get and the further that we get from that initial point of contact, the more we need to be leaning on email, and the more we need to be leaning with value-added content. Now, when I say content, that can kind of feel like a generic term, and sometimes it is abused. Some people take contact to mean hey, it's St. Patty's Day email. That's not interesting. I wouldn't want to read that. You probably wouldn't want to read that. What we would both enjoy reading is content that is informative. It's things I didn't know. And furthermore, it's things that are on point to the reason that we had this conversation in the first place. And the beauty about that is that you already possess all of that knowledge. You have the domain expertise. If you don't, you shouldn't be in the business. If you do, you should be doing the minimum amount of work necessary to productize that, package it in an easily digestible format, push it out to your prospects on a regular basis. And that, as we go further into the sales cycle at month 3, at month 6, at month 9, is what is going to allow you to actually be both differentiated and to have permission to stay in front of people. So we've kind of talked from the beginning to the end. All throughout, we're talking about follow-up, and we're talking about the game-changing influence that will have on your business. That's the advice that I have for you today. Thanks for watching. See you next week.